So are you going to sue Imran Khan for defamation for these accusations?
I could, and the question is, what jurisdiction would I sue him in? Look, he has a daughter, as we all know. He was sued in a court in the United States. The court ascertained, based on a DNA test, that this young lady who was a child at that time, was Imran Khan's daughter. The court gave a verdict. Imran Khan just ignored it. So if somebody is as Teflon as that, ignores a reality, what good would a judgment in a foreign court do? Over the last several decades, Pakistanis have been fed a steady diet of conspiracy theories. If they are informed of facts and not conspiracy theories, if they are told that these groups have harmed Pakistan the way they have, terrorism has never really gone away from Pakistan's life since about the early 1990s. So on the one hand, Pakistan is under assault from the jihadis, and especially after the takeover of Afghanistan by the Afghan Taliban, by Pakistani Taliban. The other element that is attacking inside Pakistan are nationalists such as the Baluch nationalists, and recently some Sindhi nationalists as well.
Assalamu alaikum and hello. Welcome to Neador English. Here with you, I am Faryal. With Pakistan in the midst of a polycrisis, a resurgence in terrorist violence is the last thing we need. Political turmoil, economic instability, a tough recovery from climate-induced floods, runaway inflation, and a fatigued and resigned populace. As a fast erupting cost of living crisis has been worsened by tough decisions taken in the face of IMF conditionalities to procure a life-saving economic bailout, Pakistan finds itself between a rock and a hard place. To share his valuable views with us, I'm joined here by someone who needs absolutely no introduction, former Pakistan ambassador to the US, Mr. Husain Haqqani, currently working as Director South and Central Asia, Hudson Institute in Washington, and diplomat in residence at the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy in Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much for making time for us, Mr. Haqqani.
Pleasure talking to you, Faryal.
Hardly a few days go by before there's another militant attack on Pakistan's soil. The situation escalating at an alarming rate, where there seems to be no let-up in militant insurgency. The Bulan constabulary suicide attack this Monday, in which at least 9 police officers lost lives and 13 others were wounded, being the latest in the string of attacks. What are the reasons behind this re-emergence of terrorist violence during the past year or so?
So first of all, I would have a dispute with you over the choice of the word re-emergence. I think re-emergence suggests that something had gone away and has come back. Terrorism has never really gone away from Pakistan's life since about the early 1990s. If we go back in history a little bit, the international community led by the United States came to Pakistan, launched a war against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, called it a jihad. During that period, extremists from all over the Muslim world congregated in Pakistan. The idea was that somehow using Islamist extremism to recruit young people and then giving them arms and some training to fight a low-cost war against the Soviet Union was a good idea. Well, once that was done and it succeeded, the Soviet Union withdrew from Afghanistan. Pakistan's own intelligence service, which was the main instrument of organizing the jihad in Afghanistan, decided that it wanted to use the same technique for Pakistan's own issues, like trying to get Kashmir from India and ensuring that Afghanistan was a country that was subservient to and under control of Pakistan, rather than having some kind of ascendancy of India there. So subsequent to that, we have ended up having some jihadi groups organizing in Pakistan at all times. Once you unleash something like this, then one of the consequences is that people with beliefs will act on their own as well. Nobody is a puppet forever. And over the years, we have seen these various groups mutate. Some of them have adopted agendas that are slightly different. For example, they become sectarian. So there have been attacks on Pakistan's Shias by Sunni extremist groups, going back all the way to Sipahi Sahaba, which was banned, then its successor, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, which was banned, then another name. But basically the idea being that somehow we have to purify Pakistan from Shias. Then, of course, a rival group was created to them by some extremist Shias, calling itself Sipahi Muhammad. So they launched certain attacks. The groups that were trained to fight in Kashmir also developed a sectarian and different other agendas for fighting at home. And lastly, we have seen that after Pakistan decided to join the United States in its global war against terrorism in the aftermath of 9/11, there was a splintering of several jihadi groups. Some of these groups said, if we are to fight a Ghazwa-e-Hind, the battle for India, then we should fight it in the territory that was India in the times of Prophet Muhammad, and that includes Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that includes Pakistan. So therefore, we will also attack inside Pakistan. Now, Pakistan's official position is that some of these attacks are orchestrated by Pakistan's enemies, especially India, and previously also the Republican government of Afghanistan. There is never enough evidence of this, but that is what the government says. But my view is that in Pakistan, terrorism has never received the universal and unequivocal condemnation that it should receive. Once we say all kinds of terrorism is wrong, all kinds of terrorism is bad, there is no good terrorist, then we will be able to fight them. One of the things that I must mention here is that certain ethno-nationalist movements have also adopted militant tactics similar to the jihadis. So on the one hand, Pakistan is under assault from the jihadis, and especially after the takeover of Afghanistan by the Afghan Taliban, by Pakistani Taliban. The other element that is attacking inside Pakistan are nationalists such as the Baluch nationalists, and recently some Sindhi nationalists as well.
Absolutely. So the Peshawar police lines mosque attack and the Karachi police office attack on Shahrai Faisal were in continuation of the multiple attacks on security forces and law enforcement agencies. Looks like the security apparatus is being taken head on. Why are the security forces being targeted repeatedly? Is there a message in these attacks?
Absolutely. The message is very clear. The message is that as long as security agencies in Pakistan continue to sympathize with the jihadis, they will be safe. But if they decide to take on them, then they will be targeted themselves. Look, you must remember the famous attack on the Peshawar Army Public School. There, children were ruthlessly killed. And these children were mainly children of military families. The idea was to give the message that if you attack us and our strongholds, and this came right around the time Pakistan was starting to get serious about fighting terrorism, and Operation Zarb-e-Azb had been launched by the Pakistani military. So the message was to try and intimidate soldiers. Secondly, it always encourages politicians like Imran Khan, who always say we need to talk to these people rather than to fight them. It encourages them to say, oh, yeah, they have killed our people. This is a war that we can't afford. Let us negotiate with them. So far, every negotiation with extremist groups has resulted in a broken ceasefire and a recurrence of terrorism, never an end to it.
So all these attacks on security hubs, they did involve some degree of a collective security and intelligence lapse. The Karachi police headquarters attack in particular, raising questions on surveillance, preparedness and installations that certainly fell short. For example, there was an insufficient number of CCTV cameras and the officers had no safety gadgets like helmets. Is it a sense of complacency or an underestimation of the scale of threat that led to such a lapse, not to forget that the state took long to acknowledge the gravity of the situation in the first place?
I would say that the state still does not recognize the gravity of the situation. Look, when you're under attack from violent terrorists. Then you focus on the terrorist question before all other questions. The reason why we have a failing economy is also because since 1992, Pakistan has been in the international media highlights as a location where there are terrorists. That discourages investment, that affects exports, because buyers from big houses that import textile products, for example, can't come to inspect the product. So the state should have made fighting and eliminating terrorism a priority. Instead, we go about business as usual. And in the process, the resources of the police, the resources of the intelligence services, and the resources of the military are all divided in many directions. Right now, for example, we have a political crisis going. In a political crisis, intelligence officers are trying to find out what the opposition is planning instead of spending all their time and energy trying to find out what the terrorists are doing. Similarly, you talk about equipment not being there, etc. Well, whatever little equipment our intelligence services have is already deployed for spying on each other, for political espionage. What Pakistan needs is a single-minded acknowledgement that terrorism is a big threat to Pakistan, that all terrorists are unacceptable, and that Pakistan needs to not only eliminate all terrorists, but devote its resources to eliminating them. And there should be no apology for any group whatsoever, irrespective of who their primary target is.
So which means that talks and negotiations and ceasefires are certainly not a solution from what you are suggesting. But is a constant state of war sustainable for a country like Pakistan? I mean, apart from these immediate kinetic operations, can we take another war on terror on our own?
First of all, we do not need to have a permanent state of war. If we make it if we create an environment in which people know that terrorism is wrong, that all groups that engage in terrorism are wrong, then we will see that a lot of intelligence will come from the public. Right now, what happens is that a lot of people have sympathy with these groups. People think, General Pervez Musharraf used to say, Pakistanis thought of Osama bin Laden as a hero. And you remember in Parliament, former Prime Minister Imran Khan called him a shaheed rather than describing him as somebody who had been eliminated in a military operation that was under the United Nations' resolutions, authorized under the United Nations' resolutions. So what we have is an environment in which a large segment of the population is either indifferent or even sympathetic to various jihadi and terrorist groups. In such an environment, intelligence-based operations, methodical elimination of groups, and also denying them new recruits becomes impossible and difficult. If we can deny new recruits, if we can make sure that the ones who are already guilty are tried and put in prison, and then also crack down on terrorist financing and funding, mobilizing of resources for them, and denying them military equipment that they use, then I think we can eliminate terrorism like many other countries have done without a state of permanent warfare.
So a recent US Institute of Peace report says that the Afghan Taliban will continue to support the TTP despite pressure from Pakistan. And only last month, a high-ranking Pakistani delegation was in Kabul for talks with the interim Afghan government on security issues. Now, the Afghan Taliban have promised the delegation to cooperate on its concerns about the presence of TTP fighters and sanctuaries on its soil. Do you think the Taliban will keep their promise?
The Taliban have never kept their promises with anyone. And the reason is very simple. They are a group driven by its beliefs. And in that belief is the belief that any promise you make to those who are not part of the belief system is not to be kept. That is why they broke promises with the Americans. They've broken promises with the Arab countries, Muslim interlocutors that have interacted with them, and they will break their promises with Pakistan. At the end of the day, look at it from the Taliban's point of view. They believe that they have succeeded in creating an Islamic emirate in Afghanistan with God's help. They have defeated the world's largest superpower. Now, they want to help the group that wants to defeat the Pakistani military and security forces and make an Islamic emirate in Pakistan. What is the incentive for the Afghan Taliban to go against their beliefs, to incur the wrath of God as they believe they will if they do not support the Mujahideen, and do what Pakistan asks them to do? It is bluffing ourselves to think that we can somehow negotiate with these people. They are a non-negotiable, they have a non-negotiable belief system, and they certainly are not a reconcilable enemy. It is an enemy that will have to be marginalized and fought.
So you just mentioned the role that late General Musharraf played, and we know that General Zia's indoctrination of jihad produced radical Islamists and jihadis as well. The part that the two generals, Zia and Musharraf, played in advancing religious fundamentalism, often dubbed the Unholy Alliance, is there a lesson for the Misestablishment in the legacies that the two generals leave behind to be better able to curb rising militancy?
Absolutely. The Pakistani military needs to acknowledge that the only armed group in the country should be the armed group that is the state's armed group, which is the military. When you have a military, then you do not need other lashkars. Lashkar also means army. Jaish also means army. Sipah also means army. When we have an army to defend our country, why do we need non-state militias and armed groups? There should be no non-state armed groups, whether as instruments of influence used by the state, instruments of influence around the region, or as groups that act against the state. All of them need to be cut down to size, and the armed forces needs to be the only institution that has a monopoly over force within Pakistan.
So with the current political polarization and PTI's refusal to be a part of the all parties conference, we have seen some thawing in Khan's stance when he says that he's ready to go for talks. How do we build a national consensus, a national narrative that sort of transcends to change people's mindsets? Like you just yourself mentioned that there's also a need because there's a lot of support among the masses. How do we change that mindset, especially the youths, considering that most of PTI supporters are the youth, and certainly they must be influenced by its policy of ambivalence towards terrorist groups?
Faryal, the opinions of people are shaped by the information that is fed to them. Over the last several decades, Pakistanis have been fed a steady diet of conspiracy theories. If they are informed of facts and not conspiracy theories, if they are told that these groups have harmed Pakistan the way they have, and the stream of propaganda that has taken that has flowed for several years is damned, and an effort is made to re-educate the population, things will start changing. It's a tough task. Once people have been misinformed, taking away the misinformation and bringing them back on the path of understanding reality is not an easy one, but it is the only path that we need and will have to take. Secondly, as far as the lack of consensus is concerned, it is important for all of us to try and understand first the value of consensus. Now, Imran Khan will never, again, using the same example I did in relation to the Taliban being an irreconcilable force, Imran Khan will never understand the value of consensus. When he supported General Musharraf's referendum after 1999, even then you should see the interview he gave at that time to the international media. He said, "I'm supporting General Musharraf in the hope that he will eliminate looters and traitors from Pakistan's politics." In short, what he wanted was that the army should marginalize all his political opponents, making the field open for him. He's saying the same thing today, quite clearly. With his narcissistic personality disorder, he also has a clear belief that nobody except him should be allowed to conduct politics. Normal politicians talk to each other. The Pakistan People's Party and the Pakistan Muslim League have fought with each other, they have argued with each other, but they also sit together. That's what parliamentary democracy is. You do not see each other as enemies. You see each other as rivals. But Imran Khan sees everybody as an enemy. But it's not just Imran Khan. Over the years, we have created an environment in Pakistan in which people who disagree with the state have been described as traitors. People who have a different understanding of religion are described as kafir. People whose politics is different from us are described as crooks and thieves. Pakistan needs to come back to being a more normal country. In my book, Reimagining Pakistan, one of the things I say is Pakistanis need to dispense with the mythological ideas that we have. For example, the idea that Pakistan is a special country because it was created on Shab-e-Qadr. It has a God-given purpose. Pakistan is a state like all others. It is a state that will succeed or perish by behaving and acting in the interests of its people. Similarly, the belief that India is our permanent enemy. No country has a permanent enemy. You negotiate, you talk, and you find solutions. You have a security threat, you deal with the security threat. Thirdly, we have to change this whole attitude about what is the purpose of the state. The purpose of the state should be the prosperity of its people. If we can stop being an ideological state, then only will we be able to be a more normal state.
So talking of Imran Khan and his latest retraction on the US-backed regime change conspiracy claim, alleges that the plot to oust his government was in fact exported from here rather than being imported, as he had earlier claimed, and allegations regarding the involvement of General Bajwa and yourself have been made as well. What is your take on this recent claim?
I sometimes laugh because you know that there are things that are there that constitute an exaggeration, but then there are other things that are total fabrication. I have nothing to do with General Bajwa. I have had nothing to do with General Bajwa. I have been a critic of Pakistan Army's political role for a long time. I have my book, Pakistan Between Mosque and Military, annoyed the Pakistani military's politically motivated leadership quite a while ago. It has been around for many, many years. And very frankly, if I had the power to topple a government with America's help, I would use that power to install myself in Pakistan rather than sit and do an intellectual's job sitting abroad. All of this is fabrication. It's part of conspiracy theories. As far as Mr. Imran Khan spinning it left, right, and center, he will actually end up creating false narratives. The problem is with those people who are willing to, it's so sad. There's a couplet of the great Ghalib that Munhasir marne pe ho jinki umeed, na umeedi unki dekha chahiye. That these people who are willing to believe in a man who can't keep his story straight. So according to his story, first it was the Americans who conspired against him. Then it was General Bajwa who conspired against him. And then General Bajwa, through me, convinced the Americans to do what? To tell General Bajwa to conspire against him. This is all absurd.
That's coming full circle.
It has come full circle and it just does not add up. The fact is that Mr. Imran Khan lost power because he lost the support of the majority of parliament. That is parliamentary democracy. In European countries where there are coalition governments, look at Belgium, look at the Netherlands, look at Denmark. These are countries where there are coalition governments. Coalition governments fall, no confidence motions pass, and prime ministers change, system goes on. What Pakistanis need to understand is that that is the reality. Stop believing in conspiracy theories. Stop thinking, for example, that the reason why Pakistan is poor is because some people have stolen the wealth and that wealth is parked in foreign accounts. And now Mr. Honest, who has no experience in politics, has played cricket all his life, will come and bring that money back. And all of a sudden, Pakistan will become rich. These are fantasies. No country has been able to do that. What others can't do, we won't be able to do. Stop thinking in conspiracy terms. Stop thinking in fantasy terms.
So are you going to sue Imran Khan for defamation for these accusations?
I could, and the question is, what jurisdiction would I sue him in? Look, he has a daughter, as we all know. He was sued in a court in the United States. The court ascertained, based on a DNA test, that this young lady was, who was a child at that time, was Imran Khan's daughter. The court gave a verdict. Imran Khan just ignored it. So if somebody is as Teflon as that, ignores a reality, what good would a judgment in a foreign court do? His followers, who are totally blind, there is a Quranic term, summun, bukmun, umyun, fahum, la yafqahun. They are blind, they can't hear, they can't see. They have totally shut themselves off from reality. No difference will come about with them. I think I have other and better things to do, like the research work that I continue to do.
So which way do you see the US-Pak relations heading after this previous period of disengagement?
I think that the United States and Pakistan are in a period of relatively low-level engagement, but a functional engagement. I think they have to right-size their relationship. It is in the interest of both countries to have a good, solid relationship, but that relationship is not going to be like in the past, when the United States showered money in return for certain strategic advantages being conferred on it by Pakistan, nor should it be a relationship in which both sides are wary of one another. Once Pakistan's own internal turmoil has subsided, I think Pakistan and the United States will have to talk to each other more as honest interlocutors, rather than both sides having magnificent delusions with one another.
But is Biden really interested in sort of engaging in Pakistan, or was it just with Imran Khan that he was not engaging?
We must understand the strategic context. Pakistan is no longer needed for shipment of material and equipment to Afghanistan, because there are no American troops in Afghanistan. The United States has developed a closer strategic partnership with India. Pakistan is seen as being unnecessarily close to China. And Pakistan's economy is dysfunctional, so America does not have a significant economic interest in Pakistan either. So it may be our narcissism, nationalistic narcissism, that we think, why aren't they paying attention to us? We need to think, what are we doing that will get their attention? The economic relationship between Pakistan and the United States is the same size as the economic relationship between Morocco and the United States. Maybe even smaller than that. So Pakistan will get the same level of attention that, say, for example, Morocco gets, which is not a bad level. But Pakistanis have become accustomed to the high level of attention that Pakistan used to get when Pakistan was a strategic partner of the United States. Either we reinvent the strategic partnership or we reconcile to a lesser relationship.
So do you think the new army chief can also play a role in fixing relations with the United States, if at all?
I think that the Pakistan army always will be an important institution in Pakistan's life. It is the most important institution in Pakistan's domestic as well as international relations. And the new army chief will be able to communicate to the American leadership the seriousness of this very critical institution in developing a partnership with the United States, as well as in what the long-term future of the country is going to be.
So the release of two Pakistani brothers accused of aiding Al-Qaeda for Guantanamo Bay last month brings into focus another dark chapter of the war on terror, the use of gulags to evade legal systems and prevent the accused from defending themselves. And we know that Barack Obama promised to shut down the facility during his rule. Does the US realize the need to do so, considering that two presidents have occupied the White House since then?
I think that the biggest problem in dealing with a problem like Guantanamo Bay has been, what do you do with the people who are already there? Many of them, if they are released, will probably join some jihadi group or the other. So they have been finding creative solutions. For example, there's a gentleman who was released to the nation of Belize, which is in South America, so that he cannot, and with hardly any Muslims or groups that could actually become radicalized. And he's restarting his life there. These two brothers have been released. We will see how these people can be readjusted in society in various places so that then they are not a threat. Should this have happened? Definitely not. But once it has happened and people who have engaged in terrorism or in abetting and supporting terrorism have been put in an isolation situation like Guantanamo, undoing it also requires a lot of time and energy. I think that it is happening, but it's happening at a much slower pace than people who want complete rule of law, even in dealing with extreme situations, would be happy with.
So a Dawn report quoting Washington insiders alludes to the fact that it is difficult to say when the IMF deal will go through, despite Ishaq Dar's claims that we are nearing one. Meanwhile, the finance ministry is claiming that this situation is akin to 1998, the post-nuclear testing era, and foreign capitals are conspiring to force our economy into a meltdown. What is your view on this?
I don't think, I generally as a rule do not believe in conspiracies. Conspiracies are very difficult to execute. The more conspirators the allegation is about, the less likely that there is a conspiracy. Because two people can conspire, but 20 people, not that easy. I think that there are economic realities because of which this situation has come about. Pakistan has gone to the IMF 23 times. Remember, it is the highest number any country has gone to the IMF.
Yeah.
If IMF is the ICU of the economic world, think about a patient who keeps going to ICU every few months or every few years. Obviously, that person has an underlying condition that needs to be treated. So this time around, the international community has said you have to treat your underlying condition before you keep coming back to the ICU. Look, it's not just the IMF. Even our friends in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, who have always been very generous to Pakistan, China, which many Pakistanis see as Pakistan's closest friend, none of them have been as willing to give a bailout without certain conditions being fulfilled. And they have all asked the IMF to determine those conditions. So I think that the conditions are going to be negotiated. They are being negotiated. I think the IMF program will come through, but it won't come through without some pay. Pakistan does need economic reform. It does need to change the way we spend money, and we live on borrowed money. Look, our entire model for managing our balance of payments is an erroneous model. For example, we want remittances to be our big cushion. But what are remittances? Remittances mean that the smartest and the most hardworking Pakistanis should be exported so that they can earn dollars and riyals and dirhams, and then they can send them back to Pakistan to their families. Who will do what with it? They will just consume it. So really, we have created a consumption-based growth model instead of a production-based growth model. And we are not producing enough to increase exports. We still export the same items that we used to export 30, 40, 50 years ago, although the global economy has changed significantly. So we have to just change all of that. And that is what the world wants. And I am quite confident that an IMF program will come through, but it will not come through without some conditions being fulfilled.
So with Pakistan reeling from this terror wave, like Mr. Haqqani rightly pointed out, the way forward is to rise above political differences and formulate a consistent and consensual national counterterrorism policy that should not be affected by change of leadership. Appeasement only buys time for terrorists to regroup and come out stronger, since militant groups, they sort of negotiate tactically, and the solution is to root out all forms of terrorism, irrespective of the cause they represent. Mr. Haqqani, always so enlightening listening to your worthy views. Thank you so much for your time. That's all for now. Allah Hafiz and goodbye.